You felt it? Not in a headline, not in a study. In a real conversation with a real person who somehow made everything about themselves. You walked away drained, confused, wondering if you did something wrong. You didn't. But something is wrong. And it's bigger than one person. It's everywhere now. And if you've been feeling it more and more, if interactions feel hollow, if people seem less interested in connecting and more interested in performing, if honesty feels dangerous and vulnerability gets punished, then stay with this. Because what's happening around you is not random. It's not a phase. It's a pattern. And once you see it clearly, you'll never be confused by it again. There was a time when people were embarrassed by selfishness. When someone acted entitled, the people around them pushed back. When someone manipulated, they eventually lost the trust of their community. When someone refused to take accountability, there were real consequences. Social pressure existed. Reputation meant something. Character was something you built over years, and something you could lose just as slowly. That world still exists in small pockets, but the larger culture has drifted, quietly, gradually, until the drift became the direction. We are living through a narcissism epidemic, and most people don't even know they're inside it. Think about what you see every day. People who talk but never listen. People who ask for your opinion and then argue with you for having one. People who need to be the smartest person in every room, the most victimized person in every story, the most powerful presence in every interaction. People who apologize only when it benefits them, who take credit easily and deflect blame reflexively, who make you feel guilty for having needs while their needs become the only ones that matter. You've met these people. You might live with one. You might work beside one. And what's unsettling is how normal it's starting to feel. That normalization is the real danger. Because when toxic behavior becomes ordinary, people stop questioning it. They start adapting to it. They contort themselves to avoid triggering someone's ego. They shrink their own needs to keep the peace. They start to wonder if they're too sensitive, too demanding, too much. And slowly, without noticing, they begin losing pieces of themselves trying to maintain a relationship with someone who never intended to give anything real in return. This is how narcissism spreads, not just through the people who have it, but through the culture that protects it. And culture didn't get here by accident. Understand what's happening beneath the surface. Narcissism, in its truest psychological sense, is not confidence. It is not strength. It is the absence of a stable inner self. When someone cannot tolerate their own flaws, cannot sit with discomfort, cannot admit weakness without feeling annihilated, they build something to protect that wound. A wall, a persona, a version of themselves that is always right, always impressive, always justified. They are not performing for you. They are performing for themselves. Because somewhere underneath all of that presentation is a person who deeply, silently, believes they are not enough. That is the truth about narcissism that most people never hear. It is not arrogance born from strength. It is arrogance born from terror. The terror of being seen as ordinary. The terror of being rejected. The terror of facing a version of themselves they cannot control. And because that terror is never addressed, never named, never worked through, it gets redirected, outward, onto you, onto everyone around them. Your praise becomes a temporary fix for a wound that never heals. Your compliance becomes a daily supply they need to function. Your boundaries become threats to a system that requires your smallness to maintain its size. And now multiply that dynamic, not by one person, by millions. Because the conditions that create narcissistic behavior are not rare anymore. They are built into the fabric of everyday modern life. And they are getting stronger. Start here. With a phone in your hand and a feed full of curated perfection, what does a young person learn? They learn that image is identity. That numbers mean worth. That attention is love. That performance is the path. They spend hours, daily, consuming a world that does not exist. Filtered bodies, manufactured confidence, edited lives presented as reality. And without even realizing it, they begin to measure themselves against something that was never real to begin with. This is where it starts, not with cruelty, with comparison. You scroll and something tightens in your chest. Someone your age is further ahead. Someone with less talent has more followers. Someone who seems to do nothing has everything you want. And that ache, that quiet, desperate ache of feeling behind, of feeling invisible, of feeling like you're running a race and everyone else got a head start. That ache doesn't disappear when you close the app. It follows you. Into your conversations. Into your decisions. Into the way you present yourself to the world. And here's where the psychology turns dangerous. When someone cannot tolerate that ache, when they cannot sit with the discomfort of feeling ordinary or behind or unseen, they have two choices. They can go inward. They can do the hard work of building something real, of developing discipline, character, patience, and self-respect that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. Or they can go outward. They can perform. They can inflate. They can manipulate. They can take. They can make every room smaller so they appear taller inside it. The second path is easier. It requires nothing from within and takes everything from without. And modern culture laid the tracks for it. Think about what gets rewarded now. Not depth. Not patience. Not the person who spent 3 years quietly building something extraordinary. What gets rewarded is the loudest voice, the most provocative take, the boldest claim, the most dramatic story. Platforms were built on conflict because conflict creates engagement. Algorithms reward outrage because outrage generates clicks. And every time someone manipulates, exaggerates, performs, or dominates and wins attention because of it, the signal is sent to everyone watching. This is how it works. This is what you have to do. So they do it. Not because they are broken people, because they are responding rationally to an irrational system. But rationality and health are not the same thing. And when an entire generation learns to optimize for attention instead of authenticity, for dominance instead of depth, for performance instead of presence, something in the social fabric begins to tear. Conversations lose their safety. Relationships lose their reciprocity. Trust becomes something people extend cautiously, if at all, because experience has taught them that vulnerability is risky. That opening up gets used against you. That honesty invites manipulation. And so everyone closes a little more, guards up, walls built. Realness traded for strategy, and the person sitting across from you at a dinner table, or on the other side of a screen, or standing next to you at work, they're doing the same thing. Everyone performing, no one connecting. Everyone looking for supply, no one offering substance. That is the world narcissism builds when it scales. Now here's what this means for you personally. Because understanding the system is only useful if you understand your position inside it. You are likely reading this because you've been hurt, not just annoyed, hurt. By someone who seemed one way at the beginning and revealed themselves to be something else entirely. By someone who made you feel special until you had nothing left to give. By someone who borrowed your trust and spent it on themselves. By someone who made their chaos your responsibility and their growth your debt to pay. And you stayed longer than you should have. You gave more than was returned. You explained yourself in the hope that being understood would change things. You absorbed their version of events because it was easier than fighting for your own. You quietly wondered if the problem was you. It wasn't. But here is what matters now. Not the anger, not the grief, not even the understanding of what they were. What matters now is this: what did it cost you? What part of yourself did you leave behind in that dynamic? What did you stop trusting because they trained you not to? What did you stop saying because they punished you for saying it? What needs did you bury because expressing them felt dangerous? That is the real work, not fixing them, not even fully understanding them, returning to yourself. Because that is what healthy people do. They do not surrender their inner life to manage someone else's ego. They do not measure their worth by the reaction of someone who was never capable of real reflection. They do not confuse intensity for intimacy, or control for care, or presence for love. They build, quietly, consistently, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching, there is something powerful about a person who does not need an audience to keep going, who does the work not because it will be seen, but because it must be done. Who builds discipline, not as a performance of strength, but as a private commitment to their own becoming. That kind of person is rare now. That is exactly why that kind of person stands out. In a world full of noise, silence has weight. In a world full of reaction, stillness has power. In a world full of inflation, authenticity is extraordinary. You do not need to compete with narcissistic culture. You need to refuse it entirely. In how you speak, in how you use your time, in what you choose to build, in who you allow into proximity with the things that matter to you. Because the greatest thing you can do in a world that rewards performance is to become someone who is exactly the same whether being watched or not. Someone whose values don't shift based on convenience. Someone whose word means something. Someone who can sit with discomfort long enough to grow from it instead of running into someone else's arms to escape it. That is character. Real character. And it is being built right now by people no one has heard of yet. People putting in work that has no immediate audience. Studying when it would be easier to scroll. Thinking deeply when it would be faster to react. Building slowly when the world is screaming at them to take shortcuts. Choosing honesty when performance would get them further, faster. Those people are not behind. Those people are ahead in the only race that matters. The race to become someone whose life is genuinely their own. Let's be direct now. Because this is the part where understanding has to become decision. You are surrounded by a culture that is getting more fragile, more performative, more entitled, and more aggressive by the year. That is not going to fix itself. The platforms aren't changing. The algorithms aren't becoming more humane. The incentive structures aren't rewarding depth anytime soon. The pressure is not decreasing. If anything, it is intensifying. So waiting for the environment to become more supportive of your growth is not a strategy. It is a trap. The decision belongs to you, entirely. Now, how much of your day is disappearing into comparison? How many hours are you spending watching other people's curated highlight reels and feeling inadequate because your unedited life doesn't match? How many decisions are you making based on what will look good rather than what will actually build something? How much energy is going toward managing other people's emotional instability instead of developing your own? That has to stop. Not tomorrow. Not when things calm down. Not when you feel more ready. Now. Because the version of you that keeps waiting for the right conditions is the same version that will be waiting 5 years from now. And time does not pause for hesitation. It moves. Always forward. And the gap between who you are and who you are capable of becoming either grows or shrinks based entirely on what you choose to do with the ordinary days no one is filming. This is the truth that narcissistic culture cannot teach you because it has no use for it. Ordinary days, done with consistency and intention, are how extraordinary lives are built. Not viral moments, not sudden transformations, not one perfect decision. Ordinary, consistent, intentional days. Discipline is not a punishment. It is a declaration. Every time you choose effort over escape, you are declaring that your future matters more than your current comfort. Every time you choose reflection over reaction, you are declaring that you are not a product of your circumstances, but the author of your response to them. Every time you stay in the difficulty long enough to understand it instead of running, you are becoming something that manipulation and comparison cannot touch. That is the power no one can take from you. Not a culture, not a platform, not a person with an inflated ego and an empty interior. Your consistency is yours. Your growth is yours. Your character is yours. And now, listen carefully, because this is where it ends and where you begin. The world will keep producing people who cannot sit with themselves. People who need your attention to feel real, your compliance to feel powerful, your suffering to feel superior. That is not going to stop. But your tolerance for it can. Your susceptibility to it can decrease. Your ability to recognize it early, name it clearly, and respond from a place of grounded strength rather than confusion or guilt that can be built. It has to be built, deliberately, through every small choice you make in the direction of your own growth. You are not powerless inside this culture. You are not just a passive product of a broken system. You are a person with the capacity to see clearly, to think deeply, to choose carefully, and to build something real while the world around you chases its own reflection. Stay grounded, stay sharp, stay building. Because your clarity is not a small thing. In a world losing itself to its own image, your clarity is everything.